to our listeners out there. We are very sorry that we are starting late this morning due to some in-house technical glitches that we encountered this morning. But however, it is good to be back. Like they used to say that according to Nigerian Palace, at all, not bad. But here we are back on air. All right, yes, it is time for the political update here on Overt Radio. It is 23 minutes gone past the hour of 9 o'clock. You would have missed, I'm sure, I know that a whole lot have been happening in the country over the past few days, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and even this morning. But don't worry, this is Overt Radio. That is why we are here, that we want to make sure that you miss nothing as to what is going on in the country. Business, politics, current affairs, sports, entertainment, and all what you have, in the country. All right. So quickly, this morning, in the political update segment, I just want to touch on, some things, from what I discussed last week, following, the subsidy money that have been saved from subsidy and what has been given to the various state governors. Okay, so I'll be taking that topic from the cover story of the Punch newspaper this morning. And what did the Punch said? Punch said, FAAC bonanza, governors face questions as payouts hit 47 trillion naira. Okay, let me read the story so that you have a bit of understanding of what I'm about to talk about this morning. Anyway, my name is Kenneth, and this is the Monday edition of Overt Radio Breakfast Show. This particular segment is the political update. This show is being sponsored by Life Back Pharmacy and Stores Limited, marketers of Ogama QS anti-malaria soft gel and Swedish bitters. You can go to our various social media platforms on X as Overt Radio Live, on Instagram, Overt News, on TikTok, overt.radio.lagos. We are currently streaming on YouTube at this Overt Radio Live, so you can go to these social media platforms and engage with our content. If you like what we are doing, if you like our content, if you like us, please help us to promote our content on social media. All right, you can also sponsor any of our programs here in the studio, either the breakfast show every morning, Monday to Friday, 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock, and other subsequent programs that we air here in the studio. All right, quickly, before my time says over, before the producer says my time is up. Okay, let me go to that story. FAC bonanza, governors face questions as payouts hit 47 trillion naira. The 36 state governors are facing growing pressure to account for how they have spent public funds disbursed as revenue for the Federation Accounts Allocation Committee in the last 3 years, the Punch reports. This scrutiny follows the revelation that the Federation Account disbursed about 47 trillion to the 3 tiers of government in the 3 years since the removal of petrol subsidy. This was as the federal government, 36 states and 777 local government areas shared a cumulative 93.216 trillion naira as revenue from the Federation account between 2017 and 2025, with more than half of that amount distributed in the 3 years following the economic reforms introduced by the federal government in 2023. These figures were disclosed in a document obtained by our correspondents from the Federal Ministry of Finance on Sunday. This is according to Punch. It showed that 47.25 trillion, representing 50.7% of the 93.13 trillion shared during the period, was distributed between 2023 and 2025 alone, highlighting the sharp expansion in revenues following the removal of petrol subsidy, exchange rate reforms, and increased revenue mobilization. But policy analysts, civil society groups, and other critics say the increase in revenue has not translated into a corresponding improvement in the living condition of Nigerians facing rising living costs, unemployment, poverty, and inadequate public services. This is very interesting. In an interview with Punch, a policy analyst, Adebayo Abubakar, said the removal of subsidy had increased government revenues, but argued that the additional funds had not always translated into spending that reflected the economy hardship facing Nigerians. Quotes, roads, bridges, and other infrastructure remain important, but some governments appear to favor conspicuous projects while schools, healthcare facilities, water supply, and other basic services receive inadequate attention. The removal of petrol subsidy and other economic reforms introduced by the federal government in 2023 have triggered an unprecedented surge in revenue flowing into the federation accounts, with the 36 states and 777 local government areas receiving significantly higher allocations, among growing questions over how the windfall has translated into improved infrastructure, security, and public services. The sharp increase in Federation Account Allocation Committee payouts has, however, placed state governors under renewed scrutiny as many Nigerians continue to grapple with high living costs, poor infrastructure, and worsening insecurity despite the substantial growth in revenues available to subnational governments. FAC disbursement. The documents show that FAC distributions rose from 5.6 trillion in 2027 to 21.90 trillion in 2025. You can see the gap. In 2027, state governments used to get 5.64 trillion, but in 2025, it rose to 21.90 trillion. That's about 16 trillion extra, representing an increase of 288% over a 9-year period. Year by year, net FAC stood at 5.6 trillion in 2027, 7.98 trillion in 2017 rather, 7.98 trillion in 2018, 7.85 trillion in 2019, 7.11 trillion in 2020, 8.12 trillion in 2021, and 9.18 trillion in 2022. So there have been an astronomical rise to how much state governments have been receiving from 2017 to 2020. From 5.64 trillion in 2017, it rose to 9.18 trillion. It subsequently rose to 10 trillion in 2023, 15 trillion in 2024, and a record 21.90 trillion in 2025. All right, it's a very lengthy piece that I can't finish, but let me see other areas that are key to what I want to say. All right, for instance, according to the story by Punch, Nigeria shared 7.98 trillion through FAC in 2018, which at the Central Bank of Nigeria exchange rate at the time was equivalent to about $26 billion. By 2025, the amount shared had risen almost threefold to 21.9 trillion. However, when converted to the CBN exchange rate for 2025, the allocation was worth only $14.4 billion. I'm looking for that place where it mentioned the state governors. But if I can't find it, let me take the last subtopic of that, subheading of that story. The Federal Ministry of Finance, in assessment of the reforms, and state and local government had received substantially higher allocations, increasing the resources available in subnational government for salaries, pensions, infrastructure, and other public responsibility. The ministry said state and local government receive significantly higher allocations through the federation accounts, increasing the resources available to meet salaries, pensions, infrastructure, and other responsibility at the subnational levels that benefit the people. It added that compared with the monthly run rate before the removal of fuel subsidy, state received about 9.1 trillion in addition allocation from June 2023 to December 2025, while local government received about 6.6 trillion in additional allocation during the same period. Further analysis of tier by tier annual distribution figures for 2022 to 2025 showed that federal government received 1.996 trillion in 2022, 3.7 trillion in 2023, 4.57 trillion in 2024, and 7.024 trillion in 2025, bringing 4-year allocation to about 17.34 trillion. Now, in all this, yes, the state governors have a part to blame. The local governments have a part to blame. I'm also bringing in the National Assembly, because the National Assembly has an oversight function. Okay? Now, like I said earlier, the 10th Assembly, if I'm correct, this current National Assembly is one of the most dormant National Assembly we've ever had in the history of democracy in this country. Since 1999, when we had the first assembly, 1999 to 2023 to 2003, that was the first assembly. 2003 to 2007, the second assembly. 2007 to 2011, the third assembly. 2011 to 2015, the fourth assembly. 2015 to 2019, the fifth assembly. 2019 to 2023, the sixth assembly. 2023 to so you could see that amid all these phases of the assembly, this current one, which is being headed by the leadership of President of the Nigerian Senate, Godswill Akpabio, and that of the House of Representatives, Tajuddin Abbas, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Right Honorable Tajuddin Abbas. This current National Assembly that is being headed by these two leaders that I just mentioned is one of the most dormant National Assembly the country have ever produced. Because if, according to the reports, that for 3 solid years, state governors have received 47 trillion naira. 47 trillion naira, and yet the lives of Nigerians have not improved an inch. Year by year, vast majority of Nigerians, the working class, the artisans, those in the private sector, majority of Nigerians, life have not improved at all, despite the removal of fuel subsidy. Because in 2023, May 29, when President Bola Ahmed Tinubu declared the abolishment of fuel subsidy, saying that he will no longer, support that scheme, removing subsidy from fuel, and instead of that money that was supposed to go into subsidy, that money will be saved. Although there are some school of thought that says that fuel is still being subsidized. That is that. But the government made us to understand that they will no longer be subsidizing petroleum products. Now, what was the idea of subsidizing fuel? The idea of subsidizing fuel prior to the administration of late Muhammadu Buhari, which I think started far back in Goodluck Jonathan's administration or so. The idea of subsidy is to ensure that fuel is available for Nigerians, that Nigerians will no longer be on a queue, to buy fuel, and it will be cheap. And maybe when there is so what the federal government does as at that time is to make sure that people who are marketers, who are bringing in petroleum products into the country, if they don't have money, the government will give them money to go and import fuel. Okay, so that was the whole idea, to make sure affordability and availability, that's the layman's language, to ensure that there is full affordability and it will be available everywhere in the part of the world. Yes, in the part of the country. Yes, as at that time, fuel was cheap, it was affordable, but not all the time during the year that it will be available. There will be sometimes we will hear about scarcity, particularly when there is festive, when there is a Yuletide, when there is festivity, fuel will be scarce. But after some time, after a few weeks, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, it will be regular, it will be normalized, but it is cheap. Then we used to buy fuel for 150, 250, 350, below the 1,000 naira benchmark that is being sold right now. And when this administration came in, they said that will no longer be possible. It won't continue that scheme any longer, and it was abolished. And it says that instead of subsidizing fuel, that the money that was supposed to use to subsidize fuel, let us put it in other areas. Now, part of those areas that they've put that money, making sure that state governors get enough money to pay pensioners, to pay salary, for more infrastructure, and also to better the lives of the people living in their states. But in this case, that is not what it is. So 47 trillion. These state governors have received 47 trillion. The 36 states of the federation since 2023 have received 47 trillion. And nobody, the civil society organizations, they are not asking questions. The Nigerian Labour Congress, the labor unions, they are not asking these governors questions. Yes, as part of what was said by the federal government is to increase workers' salary from 35,000 to 70,000 naira. That was even during that was when the federal government were brought to their toes by the Nigerian Labour Congress, and they succeeded. But what about the state governors? If the NLC can pressurize federal government to increase workers' salary, if the NLC can pressurize the federal government to ensure that there is affordability and availability of fuel, what about the state governors? Can't the Nigerian Labour Congress rise up and demand accountability from these state governors who have received trillions of naira? But what we see, every time they'll be commissioning bridges, they'll be commissioning roads, bridges, roads, 10 kilometers of roads, 2 kilometer flyover, all right, 1,000 meters stretch of bridge. What nonsense is that? What is the role of infrastructure if the people that you are putting this infrastructure for, if they can't have money to buy cars, if they don't have money to fuel their cars, who will ply those roads, those bridges that you are commissioning, that you are priding yourself that I am the best performing governor in Nigeria, Mr. Project? If the people are living in an are living an impoverished life, how would they be able to use these infrastructures you are putting in place? So going back to my opening remarks, that this National Assembly is the one of the most dormant National Assembly we've ever had. Of course, they said that on your mandate we shall stand. Yes, they are standing on the mandate of the president, the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. So that is why whatever bill the president proposes or presents to the National Assembly, they will pass it with ease. Whatever economic policies initiated by the president, the National Assembly will pass it with ease, because on the mandate of the president they stand, without carefully going through in details what this policy entails, what is the resultant effect of this policy. So what I would like to say here this morning is that it is high time those in the National Assembly should start pressurizing the president to call these governors, invite these governors to the villa, sit these governors down, and state by state, because you are the one that is giving them this money. So they should be accountable for it. This is democracy. In a democratic system of governance, leaders are expected to be accountable to whatever resources that is being given to them. And if they can't account for it, then they should be exposed. Yes, I know that some civil society organizations like the SERAP have always, petitioned, filed suit against state governors, but at the end of the day, all these countless press releases that SERAP has been issuing over the years, how many of these cases have been heard in courts? How many of these cases have been heard in courts? So in a society where there is no viable opposition, things will begin to rot. If in a National Assembly, the people that comprises those in the ruling party and the opposition party, if that of the ruling party is higher than the opposition party, then there will be rot in the system, because there are not enough people in the opposition to checkmate what those in the ruling party, what they are doing. If, for example, in the National Assembly there are 100 senators, and out of the 100 senators, 80 of those senators are in the ruling party, or 85 of those senators are in the ruling party, and we are left with just 15. What powers do the 15 people who are in the opposition, what do they do? So that is the reason why that in 2027 you must think twice before you know who you vote for, because the most important elective post in the country is not necessarily the presidential election. The most important election in this country is not necessarily the presidential election. Everybody are focusing on the president, on the presidential election. They are focusing on Tinubu, they are focusing on Peter Obi, they are focusing on Atiku, they are focusing on other presidential candidates. But the most important election that a vast majority of electorate don't know is those in the legislative and the governors. These are the most important election that you should be focusing on. And it is high time those in the civil society need to start educating Nigerians on the most important election that they should be channeling their energy towards. Yes, the president is also important, but the president has defended his position the other day. He has defended his position that most of the responsibility in the country rests on the governors. As simple as that. Most of the responsibility in the country rests on the state government and the local government. The president is just there to give orders. The president can sit in his official residence for a whole year and not do nothing, as long as state governors are receiving allocations as at when due. The president can decide to fold in his arms and say, okay, from now till next year, I will not commission any federal road. From now till next year, I will not construct new airports or renovate airports. From now till next year, I will not renovate any roads in the southeast, in the southwest, in the northeast, in the northwest, in the north central. The president can decide to do so, in as much as state governors, local governments, they are receiving allocations as at when due. The president just in a smart way defended his position last week when he met with Governor Ademola Adeleke of Osun State. He said it. He said most of the responsibilities, he says most of the responsibilities are in the state and the local governments. Most of the responsibilities are in the state and the local government, as in as much as they are receiving federal allocations as at when due. And the most important thing the president said last week was that the federal, what these state governors are receiving now is more than double what they've been receiving before his administration. So we need, the media ought to start advocating that state governors should start accounting for the money given to them. Like I said, this National Assembly is one of the dormant National Assembly I've ever witnessed since I've been studying politics in this country since 1999. Since 1999, this National Assembly is one of the most dormant National Assembly I've ever experienced. Gone are those days when we have the Chuba or Kadibos of those days, the Evans Ewerem of those days, the Ayim Pius Ayim of those days, the Adolphus Wabara of those days, the Ken Namani of those days, the Gali Umanahaba of those days. These were vibrant leaders in the National Assembly. But these days, what do we have? We have people who says that, who told the president that on your mandate we shall stand. So this is what we are seeing. So I call on the leadership of the National Assembly. Be vibrant. Be what you are set up for. You have oversight function. If a budget is being brought to you for defense, it is the duty, because there are various committees in the National Assembly, in the upper chamber and the lower chamber. There are various committees. So I want to call on the leadership of the National Assembly to approach the president and tell the president that he should call the state governors, have a meeting with these state governors, have a retreat with these state governors, and make it known to them that the money that they are receiving on a monthly basis is not just to splash it on building roads and bridges. What about providing ambulances to hospitals? How many primary health centers in Lagos State has ambulances? How many primary health centers in Lagos State has ambulances? How many primary health centers in Imo? How many primary health centers across the local governments in this country have ambulances? How many schools, how many primary schools in this country have equipped libraries? When I talk about primary schools, I mean state-owned primary schools or government-owned primary schools. And yet, when monies are being given to the state governors, they will quickly run to put it on projects, because I heard, I don't know how true is it, that if a particular contract is being handed over to these big contractors in the country, that when that project is completed, they will give a choice building or house to state governors who has that project. So our priorities in this country must be right. Nigeria will continue to be poor. Nigerians will continue to live an impoverished life if the leaders, the governors, the local government chairman, the senators representing senatorial districts, the House of Representatives representing constituencies, if their priorities are not right, forget about, I'm not against praying to God to intervene. Of course, prayer is good, but when you are praying for people that do not know what they are doing, that prayer will not work. I am not an advocate of praying to God for God to intervene in a country where leaders live extravagant lives. No. So governors must be pressurized to account for their monthly allocation. When there is more pressure on these governors, when they are being threatened, when the citizens threaten these governors that they will not be re-elected if they cannot give account of the 47 trillion that has been given to them since 2023. We need more accountability in our system. We need leaders to be put on their toes, for them to be accountable, to give account of the resources that has been given to them. All right, that is it. It is 9:55. 10 o'clock, Bukola Olowolafe will bring us a news update here on Overt Radio. All right, tomorrow morning, the breakfast show will continue, the Tuesday edition of